Okay. So, we are going to be continuing to learn about our soul. This is still anatomy and physiology class. And once we figure out our anatomy, once we learn that, then we'll figure out how to do surgery. All right. So, but we will do a sneak preview, and we will have that ability to experience a little bit of what, where we're going with this already today. So, chapter 1, we talked about the animal soul. Well, I like to call it the natural soul. And we talked about what that means. And chapter 2, we introduced our godly soul and where the source. It's very, from the essence of Hashem. And now we're going to talk about the different aspects and parts of our soul, with the understanding. Here comes Trisha. Yay! With the understanding that that our soul, in its essence, is God's essence, which means that it is completely abstract. It doesn't have parts. It's just light. I mean, even light is not what it is, right? It's completely abstract spirituality. But the best description that we have from our world, which is the analogy that a lot of times the Tanya uses, is light. Because light is not something you can put in your hand. That's the best description. So I'm going to use that description to explain. I actually had in my head to get a flashlight and a stencil, but we'll have to use our imagination. So, light. So the way that Hashem creates this world, that we're not going, that we are not experiencing just light existence. We're not just a whole bunch of light bodies. We actually have a physical experience, is through a whole stages, which we'll talk about in later chapters. But in the general idea of it is that Hashem is shining his light through a stencil. That's the way I like to explain it. So if you can imagine a stencil of a triangle, a circle, a square, and a heart, all right? And if I held it in front of me now and I took a flashlight and I shined it through to the wall over there, you would see a little heart on the wall, a little square on the wall, a triangle and a circle, the shapes of the light. Now, does that mean the light has that shape? No. That's the shape that we see on the wall, but the light itself is abstract. So Hashem shines his light through 10 attributes, and they reflect in every part of the world, especially ourselves, because Hashem created humans in the image of God. So we have the 10 reflections inside of us of the 10 ways that Hashem shined his light through in order to create the world. So let's read. I've copied 2 pages of this chapter of Tanya, one reading for the beginning, one reading for close to the end. And let's read it now. I'll read it in Hebrew, and then if you want to volunteer to read in English, I'd love that. So, V'hine, kol bechina u'madrega mishalosh elu, nefesh, ruach, neshama, klula me'eser bechinot. So, eser is 10, bechinot are God's characteristics. And then the next sentence, keneged eser, 10, sfirot. Actually, I mixed it up. The bechinot are in us, and the eser sfirot are God's. You will hear the sfirot many times in, especially Kabbalistically, especially in the times of counting of the Omer, or other times. This is a huge theme because it's the way that Hashem created the world. So reading in English, I'm going to nominate Trisha right here.
From up here?
Yeah.
Now each of these 3 distinctions in grades, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, consists of 10 faculties, corresponding to the 10 supernal separate divine manifestations in which they originate and whence they descend. Continue?
Yeah, please.
The 10 Sephirot are subdivided into 2 general categories. These 2 categories are 3 mothers, i.e., 3 of these Sephirot are termed mothers, for they are the source and root of the other 7 Sephirot, as a mother is the source of her offspring, and 7 doubles the 7 divine attributes called doubles, in as much as each of the emotional attributes manifests itself in a twofold manner, as shall presently be explained.
Thank you. So these 10 characteristics that we have are divided into two categories: mothers or parents and children. So why are they called parents and children? Because the parents create the children. So this is a huge, not only a theme, it's like what's the word that I used? It's a huge principle. It's an important principle in the Tanya that our thoughts generate emotions. Parents create children. This is why, I skipped a step. The 3 and the 10. There's 3 intellectual and 7 emotional. So these 7 emotional, they're not emotions. They also create emotions. They're 7 emotional attributes. And we'll explain that as we go along. But let's talk about the idea of thoughts creating feelings. We've got, Sutton, who's here with your psychologist, and you know this stuff. But I did some Googling just to make sure that I'm right. Psychology, neurology supports this idea.
Cognitive behavioral therapy is the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. Thoughts create our emotions, and emotions then dictate our behaviors.
That's exactly it, right? And then also I'm looking in neurology, and I'm like, okay, yeah, there's different parts of the brain that, create these emotions. So it's a huge principle in Tanya. And why is it so important to understand that? It's because it's going to be the basis of all this work that we're going to be able to do. A whole world opens us to us. We want to generate a certain emotion, a certain feeling, then we need to meditate. That's where we're going with this. So, if you would like to maybe share, and how that comes up in your life, like where you've experienced that thoughts create emotions. And I did some deep diving in this also, because a lot of times now we talk about, feelings leading. And it got me to start thinking about, does it start with a feeling? Because we are coming to understand the importance of feeling our feelings, right? That being true, we can also usually trace the feelings back to a thought. Maybe a subconscious thought. Yeah.
One of the tools that I use in yoga therapy for anxiety is to be watchful, not judgmental, watchful. Right. So it's called a witnessing.
Yes.
Of your thoughts. So if you have a worrisome or worry-generating thought, that's fine, like you would a child, no judgment, unconditional love, but just keep going. Don't vociferate or don't circle with it. As soon as I reach twice, then I suggest, okay, let it go. I gotta let this go. And so that's an example of, I gotta knock on the door, right? You know that. And then, so what do you do with that knock? Are you going to open up the door and just be completely reactive? Or are you going to be discerning?
Beautiful. I love that word, discernment.
Yeah.
That's a huge word in Kabbalah also.
Right.
So that actually is a perfect segue into the way that Tanya literally writes out the process of how it works. It breaks down like the mechanism of what's happening. So there's 3 parents, 3 intellectual parents. Let's talk about 2 of them to start. There's the father and the mother. And this is, again, I don't know why I forgot to bring out a visual, but the father is the Chachma, and you can put him on the right side, and Bina is the mother, and that's on the left side. Chachma, there's so many different words we can use to translate Chachma and Bina. Chachma is a flash of inspiration. It's usually a little bit more abstract, like a light bulb experience. You kind of know you've got something. I got it. But like, what is it? And that's actually why the word chachma is, if you take that word chachma, is you can divide it into two mini words. Koach, the power of ma, what.
Mm-hmm.
It's that powerful, whoa, what is that?
What did you say? It's the power, it's the generator? What is Chachma? What is
Yeah.
Chachma? It's the power of what?
It's a flash of inspiration.
Flash of inspiration.
Yeah.
Susan, when you said reactive,
Can be like an idea.
Or-
Oh, I've got an idea. Or an aha moment. It's also visually like a point. It's very like little dot. Another little side point is that I'm sure you've heard the idea that humility and wisdom goes together. So that's another like understanding of the koach ma, the power of what is that? That curiosity, that comes along with humility, which then feeds back into the wisdom, because it's understandable that if you think you know it all, then you're not going to learn more, right? So with that curiosity, then you have this open vessel for more learning, and then that brings on more and more wisdom. So that's the beauty of the chachma. But that's just a point. Bina is the power of expanding that point. The visual of Bina is width, breadth. It takes up space. It's like the brainstorming board that we do with that idea. I've got an idea. Go ahead.
I've always understood Bina, I think, to be understanding. Is that one?
Absolutely. It is definitely comprehension. So when you have that flash of inspiration, sometimes it's that ma. What is that even? You sometimes don't even understand what the idea that you just had. I'm sure we've all experienced that because it's a creative process. And Bina is when you take that idea and you sit with it and you concentrate on it. And sometimes with others it's helpful too. But it's you take a big whiteboard and you start putting out words and ideas and you put them all together, and you just sit with a thought and you kind of describe it more and understand it fully, and word comprehension, especially in Bloom's taxonomy. I would say as a teacher, right? The knowledge is the chachma, and the comprehension and the analysis is the bina. Bina is a very feminine quality because that's exactly right. It's the womb. So the chachma is that first drop of semen, and the womb is the development of the fetus. And it takes time, 9 months of gestation. So it takes time to fully cogitate our thoughts and come up with like a more, full idea, beginning, middle, and end, with breadth and width, the full understanding. With that flash and that understanding, we can then create emotions. 1 second, I think I forgot to say something important. There we go. Okay. So, yes, that comes next. Oh, yes. So, of course, there was something important. So, let's talk about those emotions. Now, emotions can be very simple. I thought about lunch, and now I'm excited to eat lunch. It could be very simple like that. It could be I thought about something really annoying, and now I'm feeling annoyed, Or it could be a very subconscious thought, you don't even realize that you've thought about something, and you're why am I feeling this way? And then if you take the time to do the bina and to think about it, and then sometimes you can actually trace it back to the thought. So now let's use that power to generate emotions towards God. When we have that flash of inspiration, then we take the time to meditate it out, then naturally what usually occurs is a fear and or love of God. And this fear and this love are offshoots of we're talking about 7 emotional attributes. So there's chesed, kindness, gvura, restraint. I love gvura. I can give you, discernment is another word I like to use for gevura, but it's a little bit off topic for today. Tiferet is compassion and beauty, And we will go through these Sefirot. They're so, deep and exciting to learn about. Actually, it's fun to learn about because they describe ourselves. So that's, it's very enjoyable to like talk about the Sefirot and kind of gives us an understanding of how we work. Then there's Netzach, which is endurance. Hod, which is humility and beauty. Yesod, which is connection and foundation. And Malchut, the seventh, receives from all the others. So I've been doing this, right? So there's a feminine and a masculine, a center, and a center which receives from both feminine and masculine. And then the ultimate receiver is the Malchut, which is royalty, which receives from all and then gives birth to another life cycle, another set. So the main two emotions are chesed, giving, and gevura, restraint. So it's outward, inward. They are like the main themes. The other emotions come from these two. They're like the basic emotions. So love of God is going to come from that outpouring, kindness. You love something, you want to go outside of your limitations, inside out. Fear is going to come from the restraint emotion, the gevura. You coming inside, you're going to withhold, you're going to put yourself, keep yourself within boundaries. That's fear. And both are equally holy and beautiful, paths of connection to God. These emotions of love and fear, and they both have their place. And they're discussed like they're described to a flaming fire. There's different analogies, which we're going to get up to in later chapters and fully understand and fully analyze. But we skipped the third parent, and I want to come back to it now. And this is the same order that the Tanya comes back to the third parent. And that is the da'at. Da'at is internalization. So reviewing back to the three intellectual aspects, there's chachma, the flash of wisdom, bina, the understanding. That by itself can create emotions, but fleeting ones. They're not lasting. In order to create a lasting experience, we need da'at. Da'at takes something from being a theoretical idea and brings it home. It needs relevance. It makes it relevant to ourselves. And therefore, it gets internalized. So, how can we create this feeling of internalization? What is that process? We have that, we've brainstormed, but how can we bring it home? How can we bring it to our, to connect with it? Da'at is that, it's the first one of the center line. That's always going to be the connection. It takes this, takes that connection. And it's going to be the same line that's going to fuel the rest of the emotional connection aspects. So what are we doing? A lot of times we need to concentrate, really, really focus. If you use an example from life, you might hear about like something that happened to somebody else, whether good or bad, and you feel like I'm so sorry to hear that, or oh, that's really great news. But like if it's not relevant to you, then it's like, okay, you felt it and you move on, right? But if something really hits home, then you have a hard time moving, thinking about something else. And then you're feeling this feeling like, I brought the example of October 7th last week, but I feel like, again, like in the negative, for difficult emotions, we've been experiencing months of difficult emotions because it's hit home in a very big way. It's relevant. But then you use an example of where there isn't da'at for like, I grew up with this holistic doctor, and he was really into, good ingredients and non-synthetic and, all this stuff. And as a kid, I see him eating this non-dairy ice cream. Non-dairy ice cream is like as synthetic as it gets. And I asked him, like, isn't that bad for you? And he's like, yes. And that was a disconnect, right? Like if you're somebody who, like if you really connect to something and you really see the truth and it's like, whoa, it affects behavior for sure. And to the point where sometimes we tell ourselves, okay, we need to disconnect a little bit because we're getting obsessive, right? That happens too. So, sometimes like I need to do that. I'm like, okay, let's not like remember so clearly that this truth because I need to like live. But like, yeah, so there's always a balance. But within the service of God, what we're going to be trying to do with this practice is to generate these feelings, but also find their relevance to ourselves and find their connection with a lot of focus and concentration and really taking a minute to just hold the thought. And then we can hopefully integrate it in our lives more in a way of dot, in a way of lasting. And the word dot is actually used the first time that root word yada is used in the Torah is with Adam having intimate relations with Chava. It said Adam knew Eve, and you can turn to the back. This is the last reading, and it's I think the wrong. No, it's here. Yeah, it's here. So it said Adam knew Eve. He knew her, connected with her. So that's the idea of connection. And we can read in the English. Actually, I'll read it in the Hebrew first. Ki af mi. The second two paragraphs. Susan, can you read that for even one?
For even one who is wise by utilizing his faculty of chachma and understanding by exercising his faculty of bina, in the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, yet unless he applies his dot and fixes his thought firmly and diligently on his understanding of God's greatness, he will not produce in his soul true fear and love, but only vain fantasies. He will only imagine what he fears God and loves him. True fear and love are attained only by way of dot.
Beautiful, thank you.
Nicole, excuse me, what is this concept of Ein Sof?
Ein Sof, thank you. Ein Sof, that's a good question. Ein Sof is the infinity of Hashem. Ein Sof, no end. So what that is explaining is that if you take the thought, okay, starts with maybe a mantra, Hashem is unlimited. And then you really think about it, which I remember once doing when I was like a preteen, and I was just kind of exploring and figuring out because I think it was a healthy process. I honestly hope that my kids go through it too, where I was like, okay, I was brought up this way, but who says I believe it? And I took the thought that, I'm grateful to have been in a school that taught us these concepts, that I had material with which to work with. And I took the thought and I thought about it and I fully freaked myself out. Oh my God, infinity. And and if you really concentrate on infinity, that I experienced that emotion of fear. Oh my God. Whoa. It never ends. What does that even mean, right? What was I going to say? I lost it.
Is it also like it's at the top, like Malchut's at the bottom, that's like our physical, and then as we go up with each level of, learning and evolution, it's kind of like where we're trying to get to, that level.
I think all of the 10 Sefirot are equally holy.
Right.
And the way you're right though that there is this up idea, and that comes from the Seder Hishtalshalut. So there's 4 worlds, and each of the worlds have their own 10.
Right.
So we're going, up in the world. But there is the idea of, there is a linear aspect to it with the mind generating the emotions. And above the mind, there's will and desire, which actually, they're not here today. But as I was thinking about it, I was asking myself if what I was thinking about had to do with this idea of will, which maybe we can talk about once we finish the meditation and see how it came up. It's a curiosity that I have, because the Kabbalistic ideas are so very, very abstract and esoteric that it's a lifetime of study. And it's, that God literally, he gave us a mitzvah to know him. How can we know God if he's not knowable? He's not knowable. He created us. We're in his creation. So we're like this little thing, and we can't know that. But he wants us to try. And so that's what we have this for. So we have this practice of knowing the unknowable. So why am I saying that? Because I am fully curious. What is that?
Isn't it true that, yes, it's about knowledge, but it's also about experience. Through what you're teaching us, we can begin to have a multifaceted spiritual exploration in ourselves, but also interacting with the things that Hashem has given us.
Yes.
Right?
I think, and that's beautiful, and it comes back to the purpose of creation. If Hashem wanted us to only be experiencing spirituality, he wouldn't have created us this way.
Right.
So it's that ability to transcend our physical tendency, because we were created to have a natural tendency to be materialistic, because that's what we know first. The natural soul comes first, then comes the godly soul to give us that potential to transcend. If the godly soul were to come first, the natural soul wouldn't have stood a chance. It would have been so clear as day that it would be like da'at completely. There's no other way than to just live with God. But that wouldn't be challenging enough. So this, like I said, is still anatomy. Next week we're going to be studying the garments of the soul. So here we're talking about the different aspects of the soul, knowing that the soul itself is abstract, but we experience it with aspects. Then we talk about the garments of the soul. But let's take a minute and do a little meditation and fully experience this idea. Let's get a taste of what it might feel like to generate emotions with our thoughts. So I invite everybody to close your eyes and plant your feet on the floor, root. Take a deep breath. Deep in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. It's bothering me. Just keep breathing. Keep deep breathing in and out. Direct your breath now to your heart space. Feel the sensation. What are you feeling? Perhaps you want to give the feeling a name. And keep breathing through that feeling. Now take your attention up towards your head space and maybe back in time. What thought or thoughts came before this feeling? Maybe the thought occurred right before this feeling. Maybe it was a thought that occurred to you earlier this morning, or a thought you've been thinking about for a while. Maybe you've been pondering this thought, actively turning it over in your mind. It's recurring. Maybe it's a thought that comes to you and you've been pushing it away. And it just keeps coming, knocking at your door. Maybe here it is again. Now, raise your consciousness to see your thoughts, observe, and give yourself permission to choose. Maybe you choose to think about the thought and think it through. Maybe you acknowledge the thought that's knocking, and you'd like to give yourself permission to choose a different thought. For example, maybe you'd like to think about the words, Hashem is everywhere. Or Hashem is beyond and He is within. Or maybe Hashem cares. Think about that thought you've chosen while quietly breathing in. Keep breathing out fully. You can expound on it. Where does the thought take you? Use your imagination. Visualize. You can pay attention to the sensations in your body as you think. As you're thinking and experiencing, tune into your heart. Is there a growing feeling there? What is it? Stay with it. Feel into it. Imagine taking this feeling with you through your day. Visualize your day and take your feeling along. Can you visualize a conversation that you're going to need to have? A decision that's coming your way? Or daily routine, picking up kids from school, making dinner, catching up on work, answering an email. Bring this feeling along. This is Dot. Integration. When you're ready, with the feeling present in your heart, slowly open your eyes, integrating this feeling with the current reality you find yourself in. How was that experience?
Comforting.
You felt comforting, yeah.
Calming.
Peaceful. Peaceful. Beautiful. When I was in high school, we were studying the Tanya, and our teacher, we were like, what is this? Nobody meditates. And she's like, we were talking about how it's like impractical to feel. I mean, we were high school kids. And our teacher, who wasn't much older than us, she's like, have you ever tried? And it's amazing how when we try 5 minutes, we can actually generate feelings for God. I mean, we're acting like a Bainani. We can do this. It's incredible.
I find it much easier to do, oh, that makes me teary-eyed. Look, we're gonna cry now. I find it much easier to do this here. You know, there's other people that I'll meditate with, or a class, and I find it very difficult, but there's something about the safety of Jewish women,
Yes.
of just letting my mind get completely calm.
That's beautiful.
So that felt really nice, even though it was just, at first I was thinking about other things. And,
We all do.
you know, but there is that, you know, and that's how I felt since October 7th. It just got more clear for me on like doing yoga with people or doing different massage or different things where it's a one-on-one experience. And even meditation where I can see that it hasn't always been safe for me, or to just go into my, you know, be with myself before October 7th even, with other people, certain people that are of a different, you know, when we're in yoga and they're chanting, we talked about this before, and they're speaking in another language, and, you know, they're speaking their own spiritual, connecting to, you know, so that felt really even like more clear and calm and peaceful to be able to do that amongst the group.
Thank you. I think I felt similarly, actually.
A sense of safety.
Yeah.
And Rachel, you're an amazing
Yeah.
Yes.
meditator.
Oh,
I didn't
thank
know
you.
that skill.
I didn't know that either.
You really do.
In-
You
in-
facilitate beautifully.
It's incredible in just a couple of minutes that you're able to set us immediately into the tone.
I'm so humbled, honestly. I'm meditating. Last week I was meditating literally together, but now I meditated this morning. This is what came up. But I want to echo what Sutton was saying, because I'm totally new to this entire experience of meditation. And I felt maybe distrust I worry, because meditation is so powerful. I'm afraid to give that power to something or another wisdom that isn't my own. You know, there's many valid wisdoms in the world, but there's ours. And I want to give that power to our wisdom, the Torah and the Tanya. Yeah.
There's something special it feels like to not even, you know, to give it to someone else, but that it's ours too, that we have. And I know what's the book that I like, the Jewish meditation book?
Yeah, I got it by Aryeh Kaplan.
Aryeh Kaplan. And so there's a book on Jewish meditation, and talks about how meditation has been in Judaism for thousands of years. And like we forget that, you know, because it's not the loudest and the most common one that's talked about. So, you know, it's nice to be like, oh,
Exactly.
that's part for us too.
I think the first meditation in the Chumash that I focused on, because someone I was learning from pointed it out, was when Yitzchak was, before he met his Besheret, before he met Rebecca, he was in the field davening minchas, but it was a meditation, and actually the time of day for meditation that is the most potent is that time of day.
Really, in the afternoon.
So our forefather led the way.
I would have thought morning and night.
She recognized the power of where he was. Otherwise, she wouldn't have alighted off her. She fell off her camel. I mean, the power of where he was and the connection that she felt because of that. So the women meditation. And what you said something about I had to really process that, cogitate that, or hold that. And the way you led us, I think, really encouraged us to do the bina that you need to do with the spark of
Yes.
the chachma
Yes.
in order to get to the integration of the dot.
And in chapter 15, it's going to talk about tavuna, which is, it's going to say that it's really, really the bina that is the powerhouse of meditation to create emotions. But I was curious when we did the choose to think a thought. I was wondering if that comes from will, and that's the curiosity that I have. If it comes from because remember, we're looking at ourselves, and we're metacognition. We're looking at our, like you said, we're observing. I wonder if that observing comes from a power above our intellect, which is keter, which is the will, which is very Kabbalistic, but I'm excited to look into that and see if that aligns.
That's very interesting. For me, it's intuition.
Yeah.
I went back to when I was a child and I was trying to remember, like after I would say Shema, when I was putting myself to sleep as a little kid, and that was when I kind of felt like, wow, I have so many things to be grateful for. Thank you, Hashem.
Wow.
And that was when I started thinking about infinity, and I was like, I started crying during your meditation. I really did. I mean, I was welled up with so much gratitude. It was amazing.
That's beautiful. That gratitude is what you came to. You'd want to.
I think of, when we eat, it's food, it's sustenance. When we do things for our soul, I call it like soulstenance.
Absolutely.
All the time, if I do a meditation, if I do something, and it's like I can feel it inside, like.
It's absolutely spiritual self-care. We know that we need to exercise for our body. We know that we need to eat, fill our body with fuel, with real nutritious fuel. And if somebody's feeling like, like energy crashes all day, and you say, go figure, all you've had is sugar all day, like don't be surprised, like that's a sugar roller coaster, hello, right? Or if you can't like walk up the stairs and you're huffing and, then come on, like do some cardio, like that's, same with spirituality. If we want to feel receptive and connected, then investing the time in study and meditation is going to fuel that. And bringing it back to the idea of dot, study can be very cerebral, and I tend to do that a lot. And just it's like this intellectual study, and professors do that, right? Like that's a very typical professor. Like I said with the doctor and eating the ice cream, like professors do that all the time. I think there's a story about like Aristotle doing that. So the study is important, but in a way of integration and application and personalization is how we fuel our spiritual journey. I think that's it for today.
Thank you so much.
So next week we'll do the garments of the soul, which is another step on the journey.
Next week,